Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Tuesday, April 6th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well today. It's been a very, very busy day. Just finished teaching my online class, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This was class number 9. So it's been a very busy day, and I have been also watching the Derek Chauvin trial as well, keeping up on that. So this is day 7 of the Derek Chauvin trial and the killing of George Floyd, for the murder of George Floyd. So we're going to give you an update on what took place today, and we also heard from a use of force expert as well, police use of force instructor testified today, Lieutenant Johnny Mercil. So we'll talk about that as well. And in the story dealing with Georgia and the Major League Baseball All-Star game being moved out of Georgia, I talked about some other instances. We talked about this a couple of days ago. We talked about some other instances where sports leagues got involved, NCAA, Major League Baseball, NFL, etc. Some people don't remember back in 1993 when the Super Bowl was moved from Arizona, because Arizona was the last state not to recognize Dr. King Day as a federal holiday. This happened in 1993. We're going to discuss that in the second half of the show. We're going to deal with some of that history. Okay. When Arizona lost the Super Bowl because the state did not recognize Dr. King Day. When Arizona lost the Super Bowl because the state did not recognize Dr. King Day. You know, there's a history of sports getting involved in various political issues. Moscow Mitch McConnell said today that corporations should stay out of politics, but he doesn't say that when he wants their money. He didn't clarify it. He said it's all right for them to donate to political campaigns, but corporations, now Moscow Mitch McConnell was one of the biggest voices advocating for corporations to have the same rights as a person, saying corporations are a person. Okay, but he doesn't want corporations getting involved in politics. All right, except maybe when they send their lobbyists to his door, then it's okay. So we'll discuss this on today's show also. So we see that the trial is continuing. And even though the testimony is damaging, it's important to understand that these are the prosecution's witnesses. This is the prosecution's case right now. The defense is cross-examining witnesses, but the defense has not presented their case yet. So it's important to keep that in mind. All right, now on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. We've got to do a special show talking about relationships and sex. We're going to have to do that. We can't do that on 910. I'm going to do a special broadcast. I'm going to have a panel of sex experts. Kenya K. Stevens, and let me see. I have a bunch of Facebook friends that I need to go through. Nicole, who's in Nicole? And Nicole, I'm sorry I couldn't attend your class. She had an online class. Let me see who's Nicole. Nicole had an online class that I missed. Nicole was it Nikki G Spot? I think this was. I think or what I forgot what her name is. But Nicole, sorry I couldn't attend your class. What is it? What is it? I'll find it here. She had one on last Thursday. Yeah, Nikki Good. So we had to do a separate whole show dealing with relationships and sex and things like that, intimacy. So look out for that. All right. I'm gonna have a panel discussion, virtual panel discussion. You don't want to miss that. Kind of like the one that we did with WAP. Speaking of whopping, I just posted this article here about Megan Thee Stallion. Keep in mind, the stallion is a male horse that has not been castrated. You read into that what you want to. Let's see, blackamericaweb.com, because I get emails all throughout the day. I'm on to about 35 different news sources. Megan Thee Stallion says she wants to date Young Miami. Now, Young Miami is from a group called City Girls. And, you know, they have a lot of stripper music. Yeah, they talk to strippers, and they have a lot of stripper music, City Girls. They had what's this song, Twerk That, or whatever, Twerk. Go watch the video on YouTube. You see what I'm talking about. Megan Thee Stallion says she wants to date Young Miami. Young Miami is a black female rapper. And Young Miami replies she's been waiting for Megan. You remember you remember at when I did my show and we talked about Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B performing at the Grammys, and they were bumping and grinding on each other, and I said it looked like they've done that before. This is what I'm talking about. I've tried to tell you. Okay, so you ain't gonna waste time on this. I'm only on for an hour. I knew this was coming. I know the signs when I see them. So read this article here from blackamericaweb.com. Yeah, maybe I'll do a separate show with maybe I'll do a separate show to break this down as well. But I knew it was coming, so let me see here. Where did that article go? Right here. Where is it? Oh yeah, this is from blackamericaweb.com. Let's turn on the screen share. I'm not gonna show you any pictures, but because you're gonna say, "Oh, I don't believe that. I don't believe that story came out. You're lying." No, I don't have to lie. You know, proper documentation ends all conversation. Megan Thee Stallion says she wants to date Young Miami. Go read this. Explain this to your children that listen to Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B. All that. Explain this to them. Okay, this is from blackamericaweb.com. And yeah, all right, okay. Tried to tell you. This is all part of the this is dealing with negative corporate control hip hop and the covert attack on the African American community. So on the African History Network show, we do it educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. If you'd like this type of information, also you can support the African History Network, $, the AHN show through Cash App, $, the AHN show through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show, right? So you do realize, right, that, and this is not an attack on exotic dancers or anything like that, strippers, whatever, you know, I don't like to dehumanize people. This is not an attack on exotic dancers. You do realize that about 80% of them are either lesbian or bisexual, right? Y'all do realize this, right? I'm just, because when you talk to some of them, I've known a lot of them throughout the years. I'm older than I look. You talk to someone, you realize a lot of them come from like really messed up backgrounds. You know, many of them been through sexual assault, sexual trauma, been abused, kicked out the home. Many of them, you know, been through like really bad times. Really, some of them, not all of them, of course, but some of them do. So, you know, okay. When you have stripper music and stripper culture infused into hip hop, There's an ulterior motive there. We don't understand the warfare that's being waged against us, which is why we're losing. But that's another show. Um, so today, Minneapolis Police Lieutenant Johnny Mercer, who's a use of force instructor who trained former officer Derek Chauvin, took the stand in Chauvin's trial in the death of George Floyd. Lieutenant Johnny Mercer testified that neck restraints are not part of the department's training. Neck restraints are not part of the department's training, and that officers are instructed to, quote, use the least amount of force necessary to meet your objectives. Now, a prosecutor showing a photo of Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd's neck asked Lieutenant Johnny Mercer, quote, is this an MPD, Minneapolis Police Department, an MPD trained neck restraint? The lieutenant responded, no, sir. We're going to pick this up on the other side of the break. We'll let you hear Lieutenant Johnny Mercer and a recap of what took place today. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael M. Hotel. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. How's everybody doing? Stand by. Okay, we'll be back from break in 2 minutes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Tuesday, April 6, 2021, and we're live. Also, in entertainment news, so we know that everybody's still praying for DMX, but there was I posted the video uploaded April 4th from the Isley brothers. The Isley brothers featuring Snoop Dogg. Okay, so the Isley brothers have new music. It's called Friends and Family. I think that's the name of it. Let me scroll down to it here. And Ron Isley is in here with his beard. Okay, this is about to be a summer classic. Yeah, Friends and Family official video featuring Ron Isley and Snoop Dogg. This is the Isley brothers. So we're going to. I'm going to post this link here. We're not going to play it here because of copyright infringement. I don't want my video taken down from YouTube and Facebook. But we're going to post the link here. It's already been viewed 470,000 times. It was uploaded April 5th. Looks like April. Well, let me see. April 4th or April 5th. One of those days it was uploaded. Looks like April 5th. Here I'm on the Isley Brothers YouTube channel. So we're going to post this link here, right here. Check out that video. That's going to be a classic this summer. Okay, remember where you found out about it first, right? All right. Okay, so let's go. Let me take down Megan Thee Stallion. All right. Let's go to what happened today at the trial. So right before the break, I was talking about Lieutenant Johnny Mercer. We're going to go to clip one in just a minute here, Shakita. Clip one for NBC Nightly News. And let's turn on the screen share. We have this here also. I can show it to you. Let's see. Okay, so police use of force instructor testified in Derek Chauvin trial. Now, Lieutenant Johnny Mercer testified that neck restraints are not part of the Minneapolis Police Department's training, and that officers are instructed to use the least amount of force necessary to meet your objectives. Quote, use the least amount of force necessary to meet your objectives, end quote. Now, prosecutors showing a photo of Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd's neck asked Lieutenant Johnny Mercer, quote, is this an MPD trained neck restraint, end quote. The lieutenant responded, no, sir. Now, under cross-examination, the defense displayed a photo that appeared to show Derek Chauvin's knee on George Floyd's shoulder blade as the ambulance arrived. Okay. Now, it may have been on the shoulder blade then, but it was also on George Floyd's neck for a number of minutes as well. Okay. And that appears to be why George Floyd went unconscious, because he was conscious before you had your knee on his neck. Now, the defense asked Lieutenant Johnny Mercer whether unconscious people can suddenly regain consciousness and fight, and whether the neck must be restrained on both sides for a person to go unconscious. Okay, no, it doesn't have to be restrained. Well, you can apply pressure to one side and knock somebody out also, actually, if you know what you're doing. Now, Mercer responded yes to both questions. The instructor also testified that it generally takes under 10 seconds to make someone go unconscious from a neck restraint. Now, earlier, the jury from Sergeant Kerr, a crisis intervention coordinator with the Minneapolis Police Department, earlier the jury heard from Sergeant Kerr Yang, a crisis intervention coordinator with the Minneapolis Police Department. Yang testified that the officers are trained to de-escalate situations, and that in many instances, we have the time to slow things down and reevaluate and reassess. Okay, I've seen people submit from there's a choke that you can do with somebody's t-shirt or somebody's shirt, and I've seen with one finger. I've seen that happen at the World African Martial Arts Conference. So the defense scored a few points today, but still, there's overwhelming evidence that Derek Chauvin is guilty. Now, Yang testified that officers are trained to de-escalate situations, and that in many instances, quote, we have the time to slow things down and reevaluate and reassess. Now, before the jury was brought in this morning, Maurice Hall, a friend of George Floyd's, who was in the car with him when police approached on May 25th, 2020, appeared via Zoom. Maurice Hall is Morries. Maurice Hall is in jail on charges that are not related to the Chauvin case. His attorney said he will invoke the Fifth Amendment if he is called to testify. The judge said today there will be a future hearing on whether Maurice Hall will take the stand. I want to go to I'm going to go to clip one here. This is from NBC Nightly News. This is a recap of what took place today, and use of force policies were a focus in the Chauvin trial today. Let's go to clip one, Shakita.
Officer Derek Chauvin taking notes. Today, prosecutors drilled down on use of force policies.
What is safe and feasible that we shall de-escalate.
Bringing officer after officer to the stand.
You want to use the least amount of force necessary to meet your objectives.
Lieutenant Johnny Mercil oversees the department's use of force training.
Say, for example, the subject was under control and handcuffed. Would this be authorized?
I would say no.
But Chauvin's attorney, Eric Nelson, doubled down, arguing that an angry crowd of bystanders distracted him and that George Floyd died from drug use and underlying medical conditions, not the 9.5 minutes Chauvin pinned Floyd down with his knee. During cross-examination, Nelson also brought up this training picture that shows an officer restraining a suspect with his knee across his shoulders and neck.
If that person were to be handcuffed and circumstances dictated, the officer would be permitted to continue to hold his knee in that same position. Agreed?
I would say yes. However, we cautioned officers that be mindful of the neck area and to look for the shoulder replacement.
Hanging over the case, a potential key witness. Today, Maurice Hall appeared remotely, out of the jury's view. He's the passenger in Floyd's SUV seen here in this body camera video. His lawyer says he'd invoke the Fifth Amendment to avoid questions about whether he provided Floyd drugs.
He has been provided no immunity, no protection for his testimony whatsoever.
The judge asked both sides to draft a list of limited questions for review. Also expected later this week, crucial testimony from the county medical examiner. For the Floyd family, a painstaking process.
It's like trying to squeeze water out of a rock right now. But my family, we have the faith as small as a mustard seed. We're going to get through this.
Dave, I think it's fair to say some of the testimony today was more technical than some of the more emotional accounts we've seen. How was the jury reacting?
Well, Lester, according to a pool reporter inside the courtroom, one juror appeared to be sleeping at one point. Several others yawning.
Okay, so that's from NBC Nightly News. Some of the testimony today was not as dramatic or emotional, but it was still crucial testimony that took place today. I want to look at the Washington Post here and the live updates from the Washington Post, because I've been reading their updates every day on the case, and then also a lot from the New York Times as well. So you had so the trial of Derek Chauvin continued on Tuesday with an array of police experts who testified that Chauvin failed to follow his training, from use of force to CPR during his arrest of George Floyd, because he was trained in CPR also. He did not provide CPR either. All right. So he did not follow. So what was laid down, continued to be laid down today, was that he did not follow his training. Okay. And let's see, we're going to go to pull this up here. All right. He did not follow his training. So let's flip over. We'll look at the Washington Post here quickly. We're going to go to clip 2, Shakita from the Readout, Joanne Reed, MSNBC, in just a second. So the defense continued to underscore the role the crowd of bystanders had during the incident, arguing that they adversely impacted Chauvin's decision process and responses during a fluid situation. But the crowd is already been established. The crowd was not a threat. The crowd was upset about what was happening to George Floyd, and they wanted some type of medical attention for him. If you had taken your knee off his neck and given him first aid, giving him CPR there, tried to resuscitate him, the crowd would have calmed down most likely. The crowd was more concerned about George Floyd than the officers that were on the scene. Now, several experts said with certainty that Derek Chauvin's neck restraint of Floyd was against guidance. Quote, Lieutenant Johnny Mercer, okay, said, "We tell officers to stay away from the neck when possible, said Minneapolis Police Lieutenant Johnny Mercel, the use of force coordinator for the department. He called the restraint unauthorized and described it as, quote, act of aggression. Now, Officer Nicole McKenzie, the medical support coordinator for the Minneapolis Police Department, testified that officers like Derek Chauvin, who are trained in CPR, learned that a subject's ability to talk does not always mean they're breathing properly. Now, I've seen situations where you have officers, many of them white, and you have a suspect is African American, and they say, I can't breathe, and the officer callously says, if you can talk, that means you're breathing. That's not necessarily the case. Officer Nicole McKenzie, the medical support coordinator for the Minneapolis Police Department, testified that officers like Derek Chauvin, who are trained in CPR, learn that a subject's ability to talk does not always mean they're breathing properly. She also acknowledged under a line of questioning by the defense lawyer, Eric Nelson, that distractions like those from a surrounding crowd can make it difficult to focus on life-saving measures. The defense signaled it would bring her back to the stand when it starts its portion of the case. But once again, the crowd is reacting to what you're doing to George Floyd. Not only that, there were people in the crowd who called the police on the police trying to get help for George Floyd. So, you know, once again, Eric Nelson came with all these hypotheticals and things like this today. But when you apply them to this specific case, most of these hypotheticals fall apart. All right, I want to go to clip 2 here. This is from Joanne Reed, the readout. This is Chauvin's knee restraint on George Floyd, not part of police training, instructor testifies. Let's go to clip 2, Shakita.
Spending another day reinforcing a crucial argument in their case. That Chauvin's use of force with his knee on George Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes was not part of department training. That's what Police Lieutenant Johnny Mercel, who oversees the Minneapolis Police Department's use of force training and who trained Chauvin on defensive tactics in 2018, testified to when presented with the image of Chauvin with his knee on Floyd's neck, which we warn may be disturbing for some viewers.
Is this an MPD trained neck restraint?
No, sir.
Has it ever been?
Neck restraint? No, sir.
The department's policy does not forbid the act of using a knee on the suspect's neck, which Lieutenant Mercel acknowledged. But he did say that the technique is no longer authorized once the person is handcuffed and under control, as Floyd was.
Say, for example, the subject was under control and handcuffed. Would this be authorized?
I would say no.
Under cross-examination, the defense countered that Chauvin's knee was at times on Floyd's back. But the prosecutors made the case that it's not about the placement of the knee, but the duration, which again was 9 minutes and 29 seconds, longer than initially reported.
Would it be appropriate and within training to hold a subject in that prone restrained position with a knee on the neck and a knee on the back for an extended period of time after the subject has stopped offering any resistance?
No, sir.
Or has lost their pulse?
No, sir.
Out of Chauvin's former colleagues took the stand, 5 of them, including the chief of police, the man who fired Chauvin, and the other officers who participated in George Floyd's death that day, all directly said that what Chauvin did was wrong and that he did not follow department policy. And yet, despite what might seem to those who watch this trial to be an obvious case for abuse of power or manslaughter or murder, in this case, despite the fact that the killing took place on tape in front of the world, prosecutors still face steep legal challenges in winning a conviction against a police officer. While all of the defense has to do is find just one member of the jury to take Derek Chauvin's side. But convictions, they do happen on occasion. One recent case, also involving the Minneapolis Police Department, exposes not just the challenges in prosecuting police, but also the disparate ways in which justice is often served. That case involves former officer Mohammed Noor, who fatally shot a white woman, an Australian tourist, while on duty. Noor was ultimately convicted of third-degree murder and sentenced to 12 and a half years in prison. His case is now on appeal. Chief Arredondo, who testified bluntly and compellingly against Chauvin, took the stand in the Noor case as well. Noor is one of the few police officers nationwide to get convicted for killing someone. And some point to the case as proof of a double standard in the criminal justice system, and that race can play a role in who gets justice, who goes to prison.
Okay. So okay, stop right there. All right, so that's from MSNBC. The readout with Joanne Reed. Chauvin's knee restraint on George Floyd, not part of police training. Instructor testifies. That was Lieutenant Johnny Mercer, and we have a picture of Lieutenant Johnny Mercer up right now. The Minneapolis Police Department use of force training instructor. Okay. She mentioned excited delirium. There is an article from the New York Times that deals with excited delirium, and we may talk about this some on tomorrow's show. What is excited delirium? The term, I think this is the one I want. Yeah. What is excited delirium? The term in use in the George Floyd in the Derek Chauvin trial. So let's see here. We want to try to show this to you. I want to flip over to this here. This is from the trial. This is from the updates from the New York Times. That should have stopped, Minneapolis police chief says of Chauvin's actions. Okay, this is from, and if you just Google excited delirium, you'll be able to find this article here from the New York Times. This is part of their ongoing coverage here. Where is it? Hold on. Okay. Right here. What is excited delirium? This ties into the fear of African Americans, especially African American men, on drugs. In opening statements, the defense mentioned excited delirium only in passing, but say that a contributing factor to George Floyd's death was, quote, the adrenaline flowing through his body, end quote. We're going to go to clip 3 in just a minute here, Shakita. There is no generally accepted definition of excited delirium, according to a 2018 review of the scientific literature, but the term is used to describe someone who becomes distressed or aggressive from a mental illness or the use of psychoactive drugs, If it is not included, it is not included in the International Classification of Diseases or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. In the DSM, it's what psychiatrists and psychologists use to diagnose mental disorders. It has something like about 250 mental disorders in it, okay? The DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual. But has been recognized by the National Association of Medical Examiners and the American College of Emergency Physicians. Now, according to a report by the Brookings Institution, the term is disproportionately applied to Black people, excited delirium. The term is disproportionately applied to Black people and was first used in 1985, okay? First used in 1985 to explain a series of sudden deaths in cocaine users, occurring primarily while in police custody. Imagine that. Now, we heard testimony, I think it was yesterday or Friday, that when someone is in your custody, you're still responsible for their well-being. If a suspect is in your custody, the officer is still responsible for their well-being. The term excited delirium is disproportionately applied to Black people and was first used in 1985 to explain a series of sudden deaths in cocaine users occurring primarily while in police custody, and again to explain the deaths of 32 Black women in Miami in the 1980s who were later determined to have been asphyxiated by a serial killer. Okay, so the flow of blood was cut off to the brain. They died of this asphyxiation, couldn't breathe, right? So there's a history behind excited delirium. Okay, now on the witness stand on Monday, Dr. Bradford Lagenfeld, who tried to resuscitate George Floyd in the emergency room and pronounced him dead, said he considered but ultimately rejected excited delirium. He had considered but ultimately rejected excited delirium as a contributing factor in his death, conceding that it was a, quote, controversial diagnosis. A controversial diagnosis, okay? Now, I want to go to, let's go to clip 3 right here, Shakita. This is from Meet the Press Daily. This is from Meet the Press Daily. Defense in Chauvin trial will argue that, quote, use of force was in compliance with training, end quote. Let's go to clip 3.
You today, and first there's sort of what we've learned today in court, but there's also this Fifth Amendment issue having to do with one of the witnesses that both sides would like to see testify. We can have updates on both of those developments if we could.
Yeah, let's start with what we just heard and the testimony that we just heard. And I think it's clear right now that the prosecution is really focused on proving this use of force issue. They are arguing, and we heard it from the Lieutenant Zimmerman, the most senior ranking officer in the police department, to yesterday with the police chief, and now we're hearing from the direct trainers. They are trying to lay out that Derek Chauvin's use of force was not appropriate, that it was in conflict with the training received by Minneapolis Police Department officers. That's, of course, important because they're arguing the use of force resulted in the death of George Floyd. So that is what the focus is on right now. And you heard from this trainer that we were just talking to, the lieutenant, or just hearing from, you heard the different perspectives that both sides were coming at this from. You heard the prosecution saying that the neck restraint that was used wasn't completely in compliance with training, and that it was the amount of time that Derek Chauvin had his knee on the neck or on the back area of George Floyd. You heard the defense come back and say, well, neck restraints are part of the training, and there's certain other factors that officers need to consider. And you keep hearing them mention the bystanders, for example. So you're getting a little hint of the arguments that are at play. Of course, both sides are just presenting witnesses right now and just questioning witnesses, but there will come a point when arguments will be had. And one tease that we know of is that the defense will argue that the use of force that Derek Chauvin used was in compliance with training material and training photos, specifically the positioning of that knee in the back area. So you're getting a hint of that right now. As far as that motion that we had earlier this morning, that was the first thing that happened before the judge brought the jury in. Essentially, this is a witness that the defense has signaled they want to bring. It's the passenger who was in the car of George Floyd's vehicle when the police interaction first was initiated. It's the person who, the girlfriend of George Floyd, testified provided them drugs at one point. Well, you had Mr. Hall, Maurice Hall, that's his name. His attorney came and said, hey, if he is called to the stand, he's going to plead his Fifth Amendment or use his Fifth Amendment protection because he can self-implicate himself in doing this. He can say, and the concern is later on in the process, he will expose himself to a potential third-degree murder charge because he provided drugs to George Floyd. If later, in some later prosecution, prosecutors decide to go after him with third-degree murder. So that gets a little bit complex, but the judge pretty much said, you're going to have to give me the questions you plan to ask, Mr. Hall. We're going to debate that later on, and we'll address that at a later time, Chuck.
Okay, so that's from Meet the Press Daily, MSNBC. Defense and Chauvin Trial will argue that use of force was in compliance with training. That's from April 6, 2021. Okay, so you can check that out at msnbc.com. So this whole talk about excited delirium and the history behind it is the New York Times lays out. This goes back and ties into the article from February 8th, 1914, dealing with the fear of African Americans using cocaine. Okay, now let me just continue here. There was no report that George Floyd had ever been, quote unquote, very sweaty or extremely agitated. The doctor said, I've seen a lot of cases of mental health crisis or drug use leading to several agitated states. That is almost always reported by paramedics. And so the absence of that information was telling. All right, now, once again, research excited delirium. And according to a report by the Brookings Institution, the term excited delirium is disproportionately applied to Black people and was first used in 1985 to explain a series of deaths in cocaine users occurring primarily while in police custody, and again to explain the deaths of 32 Black women in Miami in the 1980s who were later determined to have been asphyxiated by a serial killer. All right, now let's go back in time. Let's go back to February 8th, 1918, in a famous article from the New York Times called February 8th, 1914. This is exactly 1 year before the movie The Birth of a Nation comes out. This is a famous article from the New York Times called Negro Cocaine Fiends Are a New Southern Menace. Murder and insanity increasing among lower class Blacks because they have taken to sniffing cocaine since deprived of whiskey by Prohibition. So this is during Prohibition, whiskey Prohibition. And this is dealing with the fear of what will Black men do when they're high on cocaine. They asked the question. Now, this is written by a doctor. This is by Edward Huntington Williams, MD. This is February 8th, 1914. Okay? They're asking the question, do police officers now have to carry a 45 caliber handgun because a 38 is not powerful enough to kill a Negro high on cocaine? Will these Negroes go rape white women when they're high on cocaine? Will they have superhuman strength? Now, as long as white people were using cocaine, it was not a problem. Sigmund Freud was a cocaine addict, which explains some of his theories. As long as white people were using cocaine, it wasn't a problem. Just like marijuana. As long as white people were using marijuana, they called it hemp or cannabis, it wasn't a problem. It's when Mexicans and Filipinos and Negroes and jazz players, jazz singers, things like that, now they start using marijuana. Now, all of a sudden, 1937, Harry J. Anslinger, who was the first chair of the National Narcotics Commission, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, Harry J. Anslinger testifies in front of U.S. Congress that white women crave black men sexually when they're high on marijuana. This was why marijuana was made illegal. This brought about the marijuana prohibition tax of 1937, which basically made marijuana illegal except for medicinal purposes. This had the same Harry J. Anslinger that targeted Billie Holiday, and you see that in the in the movie on Hulu, United States versus Billie Holiday, that Harry J. Anslinger. We talked. Well, I did a whole almost 2 hours dealing with that movie and dealing with the history of Billie Holiday. Okay, now this article here from New York Times, you can't read it unless you pay for a digital subscription. This is how I got my digital subscription, because I was doing research and I had to pay to access their archives. For some, they have a portion here of it. For some years, there have been vague rumors about the increase in drug taking in the South. Vague but always insistent rumors that the addiction to such drugs, morphine and cocaine, was becoming a veritable curse to the colored face in certain regions. You notice it's old. They say colored. This is from 1914, this article. Some of these reports of alleged conditions read like the wildest flights of a sensational fiction writer, okay? So once you subscribe, it's like I pay, I think my subscription is either $15 or $17 a month, okay, for New York Times. Now, let's look at this article here from thenation.com. The Nation has one 100 and some odd years later that revisits the article from the New York Times, all right? And I need to renew my subscription to I had the subscription to the Nation about a year ago. So I guess they want me to renew it. I wish they moved this. Let me see. Hold on. Okay, now this one is called How the Myth of the Negro Cocaine Fiend Helped Shape American Drug Policy. Because a lot of American drug policy is based upon racism. In 1914, a racist fiction helped sell one of the nation's first drug laws. 100 years later, it's still with us. But this whole excited delirium has its roots in racism. This whole excited delirium that Attorney Nelson keeps throwing around, it has its roots in racism and the fear of black men on drugs. Okay. All right. So those watching on Facebook and YouTube, we're going to keep broadcasting for a few more minutes. We'll talk about back in 1993 when Arizona lost the Super Bowl because the state didn't recognize Dr. King Day. They were racist then too. 1993, they didn't want to recognize Dr. King Day. If you like this type of information, you support the African History Network. $, the AHN Show through Cash App. $, the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. Or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for my 9-week online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, where they didn't teach you in school. You can register at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Also, we do the class live, but all the sessions are recorded. So as soon as you register, you can watch the class we did today. All right, and the previous weeks also. We posted the link here. It's regularly $130 on sale, $80. All right, remember, right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. All right, stand by. Stand by, everybody. All right, let's continue. We'll be here for a few more minutes. We'll have a quick commercial break here. So stand by. Also, if you want to advertise with the African History Network, email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com to advertise with the African History Network as well. All right. I want to go to this last story, then we have to get out of here. It's been a long day. I had to teach a class today. Okay, so this deals with, let's see, here's the article from the New York Times. This deals with the sport. This deals with sports getting involved in politics. This deals with sports getting involved in politics. All right. So, you know, we've talked about the boycotts of Georgia, corporations based in Georgia. And there was a article from April 3rd, 2021. Corporate America is wading into the voting rights brawl. Here's why. We talked about this in yesterday's show. And we know it was last week that the Major League Baseball announced that they were moving the All-Star game from Atlanta, moving it to, it actually has been announced today that they're moving it, where they're moving it to. Let me see here just a second. So in all this talk, it also brought up what's happened in the past. And back in 1993, when the Super Bowl was moved, okay? Because a lot of people say, oh, well, sports needs to stay out of politics and different things like this. But people forget when something like this happened before, okay? So I want to look at this article here from the Undefeated. When Arizona lost the Super Bowl, because the state didn't recognize Martin Luther King Jr. Day. This is from the Undefeated, March 22nd, 2017. All right, let me flip over to this here. Okay. All right. So when Arizona lost the Super Bowl because the state didn't recognize Dr. King Day. Now, I remember when this happened. I remember the song "By the Time I Get to Arizona" by Public Enemy. Okay. And I remember when all this took place. So on March 19th, 1991, NFL owners voted to remove, they voted to remove the 1993 Super Bowl from Phoenix, Arizona, after Arizona voters failed to make Martin Luther King Jr. Day a paid holiday. Now, keep in mind, this is a federal holiday, but they didn't want to recognize Dr. King Day in Arizona, and Senator John McCain voted against recognizing Dr. King Day also as a federal holiday in Arizona as well. Yeah, it's going to be moved to Denver. It'll be played in Denver, Colorado. I knew it was Colorado. I couldn't remember which city. So the All-Star game is going to be played in Denver, Colorado now. Now, the NFL originally awarded the game to the Arizona Cardinals and owner Bill Bidwell on March 13th, 1990, before the state vote on the Dr. King holiday in November 1990. Bidwell expressed confidence that the legislation would pass. Bidwell told the Associated Press, Bill Bidwell, the owner of the Arizona Cardinals, told the Associated Press, "I believe the political situation in Phoenix has changed dramatically." Now, two yes/no referendums on MLK Day were on the ballot, and both were defeated. The league had been upfront about what would happen if the paid holiday was not enacted. Okay. Quote, "We should remove the game from political controversy and avoid being made a target," then NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue told the Chicago Tribune. Quote, "So long as it is in Arizona and the alleged controversy is unresolved, people will reach out and use us as a target. People will reach out and use us as a target." Now, quote, "We're not infallible. It's a complicated situation. I don't think we did very much wrong. The problem existed long before we arrived on the scene." Okay, now then President Ronald Reagan signed the bill, established the first national holiday in honor of Dr. King in 1986, and then Arizona Governor Bruce Babbitt followed suit. Now, Babbitt's successor, Governor Evan Meacham, rescinded that decision in 1987, explaining that the governor did not have the authority to decide by himself on a new paid state holiday. At the time, only 3% of Arizona's population was Black. Okay, in 1993, only 3%, well, 87, 93, what have you. Only 3% of Arizona's population was African American, but most of the players in the NFL were African American. Dr. King's widow, Coretta Scott King, musician Stevie Wonder, Public Enemy, and U2, and writer Harlan Ellison led a charge for events and talent to boycott the state of Arizona. And in 1988, Governor Meacham was impeached. A year later, the state legislature approved the holiday, but Arizona's constitution required a popular vote. Okay, Arizona state constitution required a popular vote. Just a second here. Okay. All right, and you all should be able to see this. Hopefully. Now, a year later, the legislature approved the holiday, but the Arizona state constitution required a popular vote. Now, even though the league was aware of the political climate in the state of Arizona, the owners voted 16-12 to give Phoenix the game in kindness to Bidwell and his family, who had been in the league for more than 50 years. Now, Norman Brahman, then owner of the Philadelphia Eagles and chairman of the site selection committee, was open about having the game relocated if the holiday was not approved. Norman Brahman told the Washington Post, quote, "I think it's tragic for the people who work so hard to get the game there. But I think it would be an affront to our public and our players if the game was played there. But I think it would be an affront to our public and our players if the game was played there." Now, Los Angeles, which had hosted the 1984 Summer Olympics and the 1987 Super Bowl, was awarded the Super Bowl with the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California, as the host venue. It was estimated that the Phoenix area economy missed out on nearly $200 million to $250 million in revenue. Okay. Now, Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley told the Associated Press, quote, "I know we can support this important game and provide the amenities necessary for a gala on the scale of the 1984 Olympic Games. In addition, the 1993 Super Bowl," he said, "will provide an economic bonanza to the Southern California region as it embarks on the preparations for this incomparable event," end quote. Now, while the league was able to resolve the issue during that instance, Arizona was on tap to host the Super Bowl in 1996 as a compromise between Paul Tagliabue and then Arizona Governor Fife Symington. It was important to the commissioner that the league pay close attention to the civil rights issue and respond accordingly. It was important to the commissioner that the league pay close attention to the civil rights issue and respond accordingly. Now, in 1992, the Dr. King Day holiday was again placed on the ballot, and with 62% approval, Arizona recognized Martin Luther King Day, and the 1996 Super Bowl was played at Sun Devil Stadium. 1996 Super Bowl was played at Sun Devil Stadium. The song from Public Enemy, let me pull this up here. By the time I get to Arizona, that came out in 1991. That was 1991, because there was a whole controversy with Arizona not recognizing Dr. King Day. Okay, first they did, but then they didn't. And Public Enemy recorded the song 1991, By the Time I Get to Arizona. And that's what it's about. Okay, it's about them not recognizing Dr. King Day as a federal holiday. So check that out as well. Okay, so there's a history of sports getting involved in politics. There's a big history behind that, and we know also sports teams and sports leagues got involved when it came to the transgender bathroom bill in 2015 in Indiana, 2016, 2017 in 2017 in North Carolina. There's a history there as well. Okay. All right. Let me see. There was a article from USA Today that I'm looking for right here. All right. Yeah, Major League Baseball 2020 All-Star Game from Atlanta in response moved from Major League Baseball moving 2021 All-Star Game from Atlanta in response to Georgia voting law. I want to pull this up quickly here from USA Today. Let's see if we can do this the quick way. Yeah, this is right here. This is from April 2nd. This is from April 2nd, 2021. Let's look at this. Hold on. In this, I think it's this article here where they talk about, is it this one? I think it was this one where they talk about some of the other times. Yeah, right here. And let's close this. It's page 2. Okay, let's flip over, look at this one here. Okay, we talked about this article the day it came out. This was from Friday, April 2nd, because I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered that day. MLB moving 2021 All-Star Game from Atlanta in response to Georgia voting law. We scroll down, and if you print this article out, it's on page 2. In making a stand, and let's try to blow this up some more. In making a stand against discrimination, MLB, Major League Baseball, joins the NBA, which moved its 2017 All-Star Game from Charlotte due to state legislation discriminating against the transgender community, Charlotte, North Carolina. And the NFL, which moved the 1993 Super Bowl out of Arizona after the state refused to recognize Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a holiday in organizations hitting municipalities in their pocketbook. Okay, so there's a history behind this. These are just a few examples. Okay, so you can check out this article. This is from USA Today. MLB moving 2021 All-Star Game from Atlanta in response to Georgia voting law. And you know, we've talked about this before here on the show. All right. So I want to let you all know you can still register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. If you go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, or click on the link here for the class. Right on the home page, scroll down, and you'll see information for our radio show. You can click here to read the articles that I've written. Here's the video I did. This is the episode of our show. This is the day after the Grammys, and I'm dealing with Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B performing at the Grammys, all that nonsense, right? So watch that as well. That's on YouTube and Facebook. Here's the information about the online course, okay? And just click right here to register here. It takes you to the next page. And click here to enroll. As soon as you register, you can watch the class we just did today. You can watch the previous classes also. We do the classes live. The class takes place on Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time usually. And we do the classes live. You can ask questions in the classes, a live chat, a text chat. But all the sessions are recorded. So if you can't make it on Tuesday, that's fine. You can go back and watch the class, watch it as much as you want to. And then after the class is over, you still have access to the class for, forever. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So we deal with thousands of years of history, and we deal with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place as well. So when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, we can't start studying it in 1619. We can't start in 1441 with the Portuguese get involved. We have to deal with thousands of years of history of what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And we also deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. And the Moors are taking the teachings from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt into Europe. And this is going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages as well. Okay, so I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have articles, we have book references, everything, video clips. Okay, so you can register for that. All right. We have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace.